And we need clarity, and I'm so happy that we have Jim Daopoulos joining us. He's a former NFL referee, guys, and a former head of NFL officials. He's been seen on Monday Night Countdown with John Gruden. He's been on NBC Sports Boston. He has his finger on the pulse, very much so. Jim Daopoulos is with us now. Jim, how you doing today, man? Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today, guys. Look forward to talking with you.
Yeah, we do too, and there's a lot of questions that I don't expect you to answer because, quite frankly, I don't think anyone can answer, but I want your insights and opinions. I'm going to start off with just, quite frankly, what's your opinion on what you've seen so far this preseason with this new quote-unquote helmet rule?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I think it's something that had to come to, the NFL had to put it out there. And the reason is they've had so many situations with head injuries, CTEs, etc. So I applaud the NFL for going this route. The problem occurs is because they just haven't had a lot of training, and I don't think anybody really knows, especially the officials, what do they want called. So what you're seeing, especially here in the preseason, is lots of flags, lots of questionable calls, and lots of fouls that really aren't going to be fouls once the regular season starts. But it's going to give the NFL, kind of a baseline. This is what we want, and this is what we don't want. I think they went into this thing without a whole lot of training, without a whole lot of film work for the officials, and they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants right now because I saw some calls the last couple of weeks in these games that, they're not fouls, but I understand why the officials are calling them. They've been told anything close, call it, and let us look at it, and then we can give you guys, some guidelines of what we want called and what we don't want called once the regular season starts. So
you're confident that the biggest issue in your mind with this new rule is the lack of training? I mean, one thing that pointed out to me that you just said is especially the officials don't know what's going on, and that's a big concern, and the players don't know what's going on either. So is this rule going to get adjusted? And second part of this is, are they going to just overcall everything this summer in the preseason and then dial it back once the regular season comes about? Or are they just going to keep throwing these flags until they see less of it?
No, I think what you're going to see is you'll see them start to dial it back a little bit once the regular season starts. I think the players have got to understand that this is a serious situation, and the NFL is really, they want these helmet hits out of the game, the illegal helmet hits. Now, there's so many hits that occur during the game, and it's still, it just kind of puzzles me why the NFL doesn't use replay to rule on so many of these hits like they do in college. You have the ability to look at these calls. The actions happen so quickly out on the field that, as an official, you're watching something and, gosh, it looks like a foul. And now what they're doing is anything that looks like a foul, they're throwing it. Hopefully, they will start utilizing replay a little bit to take out the illegal hits. We don't want those helmet-to-helmet, crown of the helmet hits into the head, neck, and shoulder areas, of a player. So you're trying to protect these players, but right now they just haven't gotten a lot of film work in the off season to really understand exactly what they want the league to call.
Jim Daopoulos with us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, former NFL referee, former supervisor of officials as well. Jim, Seth Joyner, the former Eagle, had a tweet last night where he was basically asking, look, I understand from the defensive standpoint, but why doesn't this seem to be called on the offense? I mean, basically football, right? The lower guy wins. And now it's supposed to be, if I understand the rule right, that anybody lowering their head and leading with the helmet gets the penalty. But I don't see that. Or do you agree? Are you seeing as much on the offensive side from an offensive player doing it?
We've always given the advantage to the offensive player. We've always put the onus on the defensive player. It's his responsibility, to keep his head out of there. but sometimes you'll see that the offensive player lower that head. But again, it's the mentality and the years that we've done this, we have always put the responsibility on that defensive player. So he's the one that's got to keep his head out of there. Now, if that offensive man leads with his head, now you're putting that responsibility on the official to try to make a determination of, where is the intent and who kind of initiated that hit. They're making it very difficult. And again, I think we all understand the implications of this rule. We've got to do something to start protecting these players because of the so-called Ryan Shazier situation, where guys are becoming, paralyzed, having, brain injuries and all that. So you're trying to protect these players. But again, it's the nature of the game. The game it's a vicious game, and it's very difficult to officiate. And it's that half a second where the guy drops his head and one guy leads with this, and you're putting an awful lot of responsibility. So please get replay into this. Get something where they can slow it down and see. Don't worry about does the catch, is it moving in his fingers, or is his toe on the line? Let's see what's going on with the hits with the helmet and the hits to the head of the players that are out there on the field.
Now, Jim, we haven't even gotten into the fact that there's unprecedented turnover in the referee ranks, too. I mean, you basically have the biggest collection of rule changes in maybe forever in the NFL, and then you've got the least experienced group of referees ever, too. I mean, I think the NFL knew that Ed Hockley and Jeff Triplett were going to step down, but they got caught by surprise for the people getting wooed away. Wes McCauley, for example, Gene Steratore got wooed away. They lost some senior names out there.
That's a great point. And, one of the things over, the 25 plus years that I was involved with the NFL, anytime you brought a new referee in there, you surrounded him with veteran officials that could help him, understand his position and kind of ease him into that position. The problem is now they don't have those veterans out there that can work with these 4 new referees. I mean, 4 new referees is really a large number. And basically everybody's kind of learning during the preseason. Unfortunately, there's no kind of a development league. We used to have NFL Europe that gave officials the opportunity to work in the off season, to go overseas, to work under NFL rules, to understand philosophy, to understand mechanics, to understand management of the game. And what's happening now is whether they're first-year referees or first-year officials on the field, they're having to learn that in the 4 preseason games and then in the early season games. And it's just not right. They need to have some type of a developmental program where they can get these guys trained and then bring them into the NFL. Unfortunately, they just don't have that right now. And basically you're going to see a lot of young officials out there, and there's going to be a lot of I'm not saying mistakes, but there's going to be a lot of questions about what goes on during the early part of the year.
I mean, would you say, Jim, that the verbiage of the rule is pretty straightforward, but the application of when you're enforcing it is really that's where the issue is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so simple to, you can write the rule and you can read it, but when the guys are running 100 miles an hour out there at each other, and you're trying to make a decision on does the helmet hit does he hit him with his chest? Does he turn his head? I think there was a play last night in the Patriots game, Patriots-Philly game, where the Patriot defensive back, I thought it was number 37. He made a kind of looked like a perfect tackle and turned his head a little bit, and they called him for contact with the helmet. So it happens so quickly out there, and as an official, again, as I've said earlier, I think what you're going to see here in these first 4 or 5 weeks is you're going to see a lot of flags thrown, even though they're not fouls. I think they're trying to get an understanding, and they're trying to explain to the players, keep your head out of there. They're trying to get the shoulders in there, rather than them leading with the head. The contact has got to be with the hands first, not with the head.
Jim, do you think the state of football, specifically the NFL, is in a good spot right now? Like, when you're watching this, forget your background if you can as an official and with all these years. When you're just sitting on the couch watching the game, is it entertaining for you, Are you frustrated with these calls just from a fan perspective? Does the NFL have a new problem on its hands coming up this season?
I think, gosh, that's a tough question, but as a spectator, I love the game. I love watching the game. I get frustrated when I see some of the things that are going on out there, and I think that it's just a different. It's not 1970 or 80 or 90. The game has changed. The players have changed. It's become a different type of a game than it was back, 15 or 20 years ago. So I think it's a tough game for me to watch right now. And, to be really quite honest with you guys, I watch games, and I don't basically watch the game. I watch the officials, whether I'm at a game or whether I'm watching it on TV. I'm watching how the officials react, what they're doing. And I've just been that's how I've watched games for so long. But I think it's going to be a very interesting year. And I think the fans and the spectators are going to feel that, it's a different game than they've been watching for the past few years.
Jim, you were obviously a part of the NFL for a long time, and anyone in their workforce, whatever it may be, if they're not running the show, they always have ideas or things or opinions that they believe could make their job easier, make the product better. What's something that you would change in the game right now if you were commissioner for a day, or anything that in your mind is something where, man, if they could just do this, it would help the officials and it would help the game?
I keep dwelling on this developmental program, and because being an official, I just think the officials, I think you make them all full time. I think you give them the ability to work, year round learning this game, but you also do the training in the off season and give them this opportunity to get ready to come into the NFL. I think they need to do a little bit better job in getting them ready and bringing in, they bring in the cream of the crop that are out there in college. They bring in very strong officials every year, but they don't have that developmental situation where they can get them ready for that first preseason game. They basically, work in their college games, and until they get into the NFL, it's a completely different game. They just need better training getting in there. I think on the field, the league is doing what it has to do. And as I said earlier, this game is going to change. I think people are going to be really surprised at how the fundamentals of the game of football are going to change. I can actually see the elimination of the kickoff in the next year or two. I think there's so much concern about injuries that, the game of football, as we've watched it over the last 20 or 30 years, is going to be changing, immensely this year.
Jim Daopoulos with us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You talk about changes to the game, and you say maybe the elimination of the kickoff. One thing I brought up with Ryan in the first hour of the show was whether or not, is there any possibility that there could be a three-point stance would go away too? I mean, because the three-point stance is designed to lead with your head.
That's a great question. And, I've in reading the rules early on, when they started talking about helmet contact and having been an umpire and watching all that action on the line, where basically that's all they did. It was basically helmet to helmet contact amongst the offensive and defensive linemen. How do you eliminate that? That's going to be one of the really tough aspects of the game. Do you take them out of a 3-point stance? Do you eliminate, blocks above the shoulder? You try to put in so many safety situations in this game, and it's kind of crazy. The players would rather be they'd rather be hit high up in the head and neck area than down in their knee area. It's been that way for so long, and it's just you try to get these players to understand. You have a strike zone. You want to try to make that tackle between the waist and the shoulders. You talk about the strike zone where they hit. It's going to be a process. It's going to take years. It's going to take time for these guys, to adjust to these new rules. But they're going to do it, just like they've adjusted to the contact rules. All the different types of rules that they put in every year. The players adjust. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think the league is going in the right direction, especially in the safety situation.
Yeah, Jim Daopoulos with us. We like to panic sometimes because the rules changes come in, but the game's probably already changing. I mean, we've got pass-heavy offenses already. We've got read options and run-pass options and play action. It's already more wide open than it ever used to be, and everybody thinks, oh, another rule change, that's going to be the end of the NFL, and it just soldiers on.
It changes rules. There's rules that come in every year, and they emphasize these rules and they talk about them a lot. They're going to try to clean it up a lot in this preseason, but I think once the regular season starts, you're not going to see the influx of the flags for all these hits. I think the guys will start realizing it. The coaches are going to realize it. They don't want these 15-yard penalties. But again, I still think the bottom line is you've got to use replay, especially on these hits, because you have the ability to look at that call from many different angles much better than an official on the field can call it.
One more thing I thought of while you were answering there about the three-point stances. I mean, the run blocking would be much easier if the defense isn't down in a three-point stance. Then that leads to more scoring, and that's kind of what the NFL wants. Do you agree?
Absolutely. People ask me about rules and rule changes. The NFL changes rules for two reasons. Number one, for safety, and number two, to increase scoring. So, anything that will increase scoring and make it a safer game is a plus for the league.
Jim, before we let you go, what's a story you can share with us and the listeners from your time officiating in the NFL? What the craziest game you've ever been a part of, the funniest conversation you've ever had with a big player or coach, or just something that always sticks with you and something you can share with us and the audience?
Well, I can tell you the first game that I ever officiated in the NFL, it was between the Houston Oilers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was my first game on the field. I had just made my first call. Jerry Glanville, I think we all know Jerry Glanville, was coaching the Houston Oilers at that time, and he called me over to the sidelines, and he said to me, asked me about making that call. He told me, this isn't the SEC. That you're a college official. He said, do you know what NFL stands for? And I couldn't hardly open my mouth because I was so nervous. But he told me, NFL, it's not for long. And if you keep making those types of calls, we're both going to be sacking groceries. And that was my indoctrination into the National Football League. My first call, my first game.
And little did you know that Steve Sable and the crew from NFL Films had that perfectly, so it would live on in YouTube infamy forever.
Oh, absolutely. My first year, I was called not for long in the league, so it was fun. And Coach Glenville and I have gotten a lot of mileage out of that, and I've had a great relationship with him. But, it's kind of funny. I did my 25 years, so I guess I did something right.
Jim, final prediction here. This is going to all cool down once the regular season starts, or these flags and this controversy isn't going away? Just to sum up this interview, what do you think? Is this overblown for preseason, or is this the new norm?
No, I think the officials are going to keep calling it here in the preseason. They're going to get a directive from the league with additional film, with lots of film to see exactly what they want to call. But I don't think you're going to see an influx of flags during the season. I don't think it's going to increase that much. I think the players are going to adjust to it, and the officials will adjust to it, and I think it's just going to make for a safer game.
All right, Jim Daopoulos spending a few minutes with us. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. What great insight. I appreciate you coming on. And listen, maybe we can reach out to you down the road and get your thoughts as the season goes on.
My pleasure, guys. Just give me a call. I look forward to talking to you again. Have a great day.